quarantined still. Who knows how long we're going to be here. Today we are with Coach Cooper Fouts from Purdue. How are you, man?
I'm wonderful. We're all healthy. Nobody's sick. Still got a job. Things could be a lot worse, so it's doing pretty good.
Well, we're not playing baseball right now. This is typically the time of year where you start to see the college guys develop into something special and who might be going in the draft and who might be sticking around. You actually were drafted out of high school and decided to stick around. For you, what went into that thought process for other young guys who might be dealing with that in the coming months?
Sure. I think the draft is a great thing. And obviously it's every baseball player's dream and desire to reach that level. And I was extremely excited and felt very privileged to be drafted, but I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't in a position to go in there and compete with grown men. And I think that's the biggest difference for me going through that I knew I wasn't ready for that. And even a stronger pull is I really wanted to experience college baseball. I was a huge college baseball fan growing up. My dad used to take Baseball America articles and blow them up and laminate them in our rooms. It was awesome. We were huge fans of it. So we always dreamed of being there. Always wanted to be in Omaha at Rosenblatt. And still chasing that goal, trying to be there at TD Ameritrade. But that was a real big pull for me. I just knew I wasn't ready to compete with grown men. I knew I really had a strong desire to want to go to school. I wanted to experience that lifestyle of going to college, and I'm so glad I did.
Do you think that, that decision was to go pro, and you really thought through that decision? It seems like we're getting quicker and quicker with our decision-making these days, and everything is such a panic and a rush. And I think it's both sides, right? It's not just players, it's coaches as well who are sort of moving too fast. Let's try to touch on both those. For the players, though, what do you think they need to do to make better decisions? I mean, the transfer portal is crazy nowadays, isn't it?
Right. It's packed, and obviously with what's going on now, it's going to get even busier. But I think the one thing from the players' aspect that we try to communicate here at Purdue, that no matter what happens, you just make sure you make the right decision. And the right decision and the variables of making that decision are different for everybody, and that's great. But you really need to be honest with what you want. And what you want might be the town, it might be the facility, it might be the gear, but it's certainly going to be the experience. It's going to be the coaching staff. I think a lot of times you have to look at, what their other classes look like. What is my opportunity to come in and make an impact immediately? Because I guarantee you, nobody out there is being recruited wants to come in and sit. And we know that. We don't want those players in our program. I'm sure nobody else does either. So, when you go through the process as a kid, I think it's really important to be really honest with yourself about what you and your family value, first and foremost, because that's going to have to weigh through a lot of the negatives and the positives of each school. I think the other thing you got to be real honest about is what do you want your role to be quickly? If you're okay with going in there and probably knowing you're not having a shot to play, and knowing you need development, well, that might open some more doors. But if you say, hey, I really don't want to sit, and I don't think I'll be in a very good place personally if I'm sitting on the bench, well, then I think that comes into play as well, because no matter what, you're going to get better playing. Even if you're failing on the field, it's still going to improve your overall skills. I think that has to be something you really value and look at when you're talking to schools, and what those opportunities are is how quickly do I feel, honestly, I'm going to be able to walk into that program and make an impact on the field.
Right. And what do you think? And obviously this is just our opinions, but
sure,
we don't have much better to do right now, I guess.
Right.
Why do you think people are making such quick decisions these days, which can lead to a bad decision?
It's popular. It's easy. I think a lot of it has to do with, like a lot of the things we're experiencing now, it's social media. It's the ability to put it out there on a Twitter or an Instagram page. I think a lot of young kids, unfortunately, that we talk to, and especially parents, they feel pressured to, because certainly they're inputting money and they're inputting time and sacrifices into this, possible opportunity. And I think people want to feel like they're rewarded for that, and they're getting that back to them. And I think when they make a commitment to a school, or when they're being recruited by schools, they feel that's coming back to them. And certainly everybody wants to feel valued. I think there's no stronger impression on somebody, and certainly I could say that as well, going through these experiences, both as a coach and a player. You always want to feel wanted. You want to feel valued. And I think when that process is going on, those kids feel that value and they feel wanted, and that's a great feeling to have. It really gives them that boost of what they're looking for, and I think that's great. But man, I really believe so much of it is based on what this maybe baseball world is and making decisions early and saying, I'm committed, I'm done. Or even, like I said, some people feel there's so much pressure that they just want to get it over with. And they feel like once that's done, boy, it really slows things down. When in reality, that's when the hard work begins, because now you have something you need to uphold to that school you're committed to as well.
Right. And the thing is, though, also on the flip side of that is, yeah, we have the peer pressure to commit, but then also there's so many schools that are out there trying to get ahead of the curve, trying to get the best talent. And families are worried that, hey, if I don't do it now, then the spot's going to be missing. I mean, isn't it fair to say that some of the blame is on the way certain programs recruit?
I think you can look at it that way. Sure. I don't want to put, any program in a spotlight and say they're wrong for doing what they're doing, because that's
I wouldn't say, I don't want to say a
right.
program. Like I was talking about with Coach Walter at Wake Forest, just the whole system itself allowing you to get that far ahead.
No doubt. A few years back at the baseball convention, I mean, John McCormick stood up in the middle of it and said, we all wanted to say, well, once you commit, sign the NLI, right? We've all talked about that. And is that a reality? No, probably not right now. But I just think there's so much being done in fear, whether it's fear on the coaching side that if I don't get this player, maybe somebody that I compete with is going to get this player and I don't want to miss out. And the same thing is done with that player. Well, if I don't take this opportunity now, well, somebody else is going to, because they're going to find somebody else. And will I have the same opportunity later? I think so much of it's based on fear. And when you get so many people, players or programs that are doing it, well, now it just becomes, what everybody does, and it becomes more acceptable, which I think is something that we really need to look at internally as baseball, as college baseball. Well, how valuable is that? Is that really improving the game? Is that improving, our system in college baseball? Is that improving the players? Is that improving the players' opportunity to develop and grow through high school? Is it improving their opportunity to develop in the program? I think that all has to be looked at and identified, really honestly, for sure.
Is there any way to fix it?
I think there'd have to be sweeping changes, maybe what a softball and a soccer and some of the, female sports have taken on. Some of those rules they've taken on of, no communication at all until a certain age, to where, you go back to this year's convention and we're trying to get back unofficial visits to sophomores. And so we're trying to go back to what we had a little bit, because as a baseball coach, and I speak only for myself, I think it's a little bit unfair to even have a player on campus the first day they can take an unofficial, they can take an official. I just think you're forcing them into even more bad decisions, because back when they could take their unofficials earlier, well, now they get to see the things they want to see, or get to see the programs they want to see, and visit and develop relationships with those coaches and with those programs, where I think those relationships are invaluable. And when you're taking that time away from them, and now it's only on the phone, which is so impersonal to start, I think that makes that decision even harder. So I would be certainly for going back and getting back the unofficial visits as a sophomore, or at least some period before their official visits could start, for sure. But to answer your question, I don't think it's going to change unless we make those big, large, sweeping changes as a Division I. I don't think it's going to happen.
Switch topics on you here. I won't make you talk about yourself, but in looking at your bio, you have recruited, you have coached. The list of players is amazing. That you have led and helped move on to the next level. So when you're looking at a high school guy, a junior college guy, identifying those players, what are you looking for?
I think first and foremost, it has to be a personality fit. I think so often we look at the talent, and once you evaluate the talent, which I should say that's probably first, I think the talent level has to start first. But I think that the body of the work is done within the process of getting to know that player. For me personally, it has to be a kid that wants to be coached in our style of play here at Purdue. We're going to coach guys, aggressively. It's going to be an up-tempo atmosphere at practice and at games. We want guys to have freedom to make mistakes. We want guys to play on the edge. And so when you look at a guy, and let's say you're going to watch a high school guy and he plays very tentatively and he doesn't play aggressively, or maybe there's some reaction to failure that you don't like to see. Well, that's some of those things you really look at. For us, a high school guy, I think, is so much different than a junior college guy. A high school guy, I think you're always looking to, well, what does he do better maybe than some of our young guys now? Or how can I compare him to a guy we've had in the past, and this is how we maybe developed him. With that being said, it still has to go back to within the fit of the program. It has to be the right fit personality-wise, and it has to be a guy that you say, man, I really want to coach that guy every day. If you can't say that, Well, the talent doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at that point. I think it's hard to build a relationship when you don't feel that you really want to coach a guy or could coach that guy. And I think on the junior college guy, you're looking for a guy that can be a plug and play immediately. I don't think anybody recruits a junior college guy to come in and be a fifth outfitter or a backup player. They're looking for immediate impact. So certainly the fit still has to go within the personality, but I think it's really hey, can he perform in these spots? Can he perform as a three hitter, or can he perform as a back end of a bullpen guy? Those immediate impact things are really important for us. So the recruiting aspect, I think it's ever evolving. I think you're continuing to evolve both of what you like or don't like based on your experience you've gone through, whether this year or 10 years prior to that. It's going to come into play with what do you think fits your system? And again, the talent is certainly a big part of that, but the personality is equally as big a part of that. And I think here at Purdue, we've got such a great situation in what Coach Goff is building as a program, because we are building a program. Make no mistake, this is so far from being what some of those major Power Fives are at when they've had years and years of success. And we're able to be honest about that. We are building a program. Well, to build a program, you have to get the right people. The talent is great, but the right people have to be in play, because they have to be here in West Lafayette. They have to be here every day, not just on the baseball field, but they have to be on campus. They have to be in this community, and they have to really love to be here. If they don't, the talent doesn't mean anything. It has to be about the fit.
And so for you, what's a good fit? Somebody who's going to work with you, Coach. What kind of personality gels with you?
Sure. I think it's a person that gels with our program. Sure. I mean, it has to be a guy that can accept some criticism. I think that's something you have to be really honest about, because when you talk about how you're going to coach somebody, the expectations don't change when you get here. They only get larger. And if somebody can't handle that, I think that's a really hard thing to coach. With that being said, I think you have to really, in today's athletes, you have to be really honest, have to be really open with them, and you have to give them the freedom to fail. I think they have to understand that you're going to fail, and we want you to, but we're also going to coach you in your failures. It's not going to just be, hey, well, Johnny, you failed, and he says, I know, and you walk away. Well, that's our job, is to really help that guy understand maybe why he failed or why he continues to fail. So the personality for us is going to be a guy that really loves to practice, loves to play. I think in our program, our practices are so up-tempo. We're going to demand a lot of our guys that if you don't like to practice and you don't like the mundaneness of practice, the ability to play catch the right way, the ability to communicate the right way on a fly ball, the ability to run hard out of the box, I think those things will be very appealing to guys that want to play the game right way and play the game maybe our way. But the guys that don't want to play that way, that's going to be really hard for them to gel within our program with what we have and also with what we're building.
All right, so as a big infield and a catching guy, all right, we got Game 7 of the World Series. You can pick any player in the history of the MLB. Who do you want to be your catcher?
Oh, man. On the plate, you know what? I loved Charles Johnson. I loved him when he was at University of Miami, and I loved him with his Marlins. I mean, his defense was so sound, and he had a rocket for an arm. I loved Charles Johnson growing up. I think he is an absolute superstar, and he knew what his role was. He was a really good, solid defensive catcher that you knew was going to come through and needed to. So I'm a huge Charles Johnson fan.
A legend where I'm from in Miami.
No doubt. There's no doubt. And the guy was he was a superstar, and people forget about him because it's been a while. But, I mean, if you look about what guys did back then, again, at Miami, and he was with the Marlins, the guy was as good of a defensive catcher as I've ever seen.
Okay, so now shortstop, you get one.
It's hard for me to go against Omar Vizquel because he was so good when it mattered. And he was so good, again, defensively. So we're talking about two real solid defensive positions, and I'm a huge Jeter fan. And I mean, he's Captain Clutch. I mean, God, it's hard to go against that guy, but I love Omar Vizquel. I mean, the things he did defensively, and you knew if the ball was hit to him, the guy was out. It didn't matter. The guy was out. And maybe it's by a step, maybe it's by half a step, but he was out every daggum time. So I'm a huge, huge Omar Vizquel fan.
All right, you get to pick one hitter now. Game's on the line. You need a hit. It just doesn't need to be a big hit. You need to battle the ball, line drive to the outfield. What hit are you taking?
Oh, man. I mean, I've got two favorites, and it's hard for me to go against Bryce Harper because he's my guy. I've coached him and known since he was 12 years old, and I love him. But the swing and miss might be a little big right now, so that's tough. You know what? I'm going with Yelich. I love Yelich's swing. I love his setup. We talk a lot about him within our group with our hitters, and I work with our hitters on a daily basis as well. And just his ability to repeat his setup and his attack, his delivery to the baseball is so good. And man, I'd say right now I'd go with Yelich. It's hard for me to go against that guy.
Love it. And we're talking about, for the most part, up the middle of the field, which is kind of how recruiting in college
No doubt.
has turned, right? I mean, why is everything nowadays, let's look up the middle of the field when we're out there recruiting?
Sure. I think, well, I could just speak from my, my side only, in my opinion. When you see a good infield, let's say it's a shortstop, it's a second baseman, it's a catcher, it's a center fielder. If you see a good one and he's not committed, you need to get him pretty quickly.
Why?
Because they're hard to find. I think a guy that you feel can come to this level and stay at that position, I think it's rare. I think it's so rare to be able to find that guy, much less a couple of them on a team. And I think your strength is up the middle. Obviously, with the 11-7 and the things we deal with, so much money is put on the mound. So much money is put on the mound, as it should be. But when you have the opportunity to really strengthen your middle and put a guy, whether it's at short, second, catcher, or center field, and you feel like it's a guy that can be there every day, I think that guy's invaluable. I think for us, too, we would add the third baseman on that side, just because at our level, there's so many right-hand hitters. You see a lot more breaking balls or changes being thrown, and so there's a lot more early contact. I think a left side infielder for us is just invaluable, and a guy that we feel can play that every day. And I think for us, when you go on the offensive side, maybe you're going to give up a little defense. Maybe that's where your corners come into play, your corner outfielders. Maybe it's going to be a first baseman a little bit as well. I think those bats, maybe not easier to find. I just think you can move those guys in and out more often than you could a shortstop, a second baseman, a catcher. If you're playing musical chairs with middle infielders or catchers, you're probably not having much success because the ball just finds them too often.
Right.
And I'd put that in center field. Here at Alexander Field, we've got a huge outfield. And so a guy that can track the ball down and go get it in center field is a must for us. So I just think those guys can change the game defensively because they're involved in so many plays. I just don't think you can shortchange those guys and have a guy you feel can't do it. So personally, for me, if you find a guy that can stay in those positions, I mean, God, I don't think you can have enough good ones. Nobody's ever said they've had too many good shortstops or too many good catchers or too many good center fielders. So
yeah, I mean, I look at it.
Those guys, it's hard.
Yeah, I look at it a lot, and have been talking to a lot of coaches, and it's always like, who's the best player, or not the best, but the most athletic player on the field since T-ball, and it's always
sure.
Right.
Well, no matter what field you go to, your eyes go to three positions. On the mound, for me, on the mound, shortstop and catcher. They go to three positions instantly. And you look what those bodies look like. You look, maybe how they move, how, like you said, how athletic they are. And I think athleticism, you talked about that in the recruiting part, has to go into play because where they are now is certainly not where they're going to be in 3, 4, 5 years. So you're always looking for those guys that you feel you can add to because the athleticism is going to let them play at this level.
So what does it look like when a kid sends you a video or a kid reaches out and says, I'm a second baseman?
I think nowadays it's really good because I think if a guy can really play second, I'm hoping he can also play some third because I think it's a little bit more of a position that guys can move around a little bit in the infield. I've seen some guys really do it well. Not always, but I think if a guy's at second base and he cannot hit, it's going to be hard for us. Okay. I think that second baseman needs to be able to defend, needs to be able to turn the pivot, but it's becoming a little bit more offensive. And I think you can't flood your field with too many guys that can't hit. You can accept a shortstop that maybe doesn't hit as well as you want to. Maybe you can accept a catcher that doesn't hit as well as you want to, but you can't have 3 or 4 of them in your lineup at one time. That's just a recipe for disaster.
The kid playing first base in high school, what would you encourage them to do so that they aren't just trying to get recruited as a first baseman?
Play outfield. Go out and play left, play right. Go out and play those positions. I don't think third or second or short is going to be an option, but I think your ability to go out and play outfield is huge for you because if you are labeled as a first baseman only, you're probably a first baseman DH. And if you don't hit, you don't play because of your positioning. So I think if you can increase your ability to be more athletic and more valuable in a defensive aspect and play more positions, I think that's really a good thing for those guys to do to experience those other spots, even if they don't run great. But, man, they've got great first steps. They got great routes. They can throw the ball online. They could command the baseball from the outfield. That stuff's great. Just make yourself more valuable when you're not hitting because it's going to go in a slump. It's going to fail at some point. So how can you still be more valuable to yourself in the recruiting process, but also to your future team?
Great. I mean, that is such fantastic information. I think we covered most of the diamond there. Last questions for you here. What is the most, for you personally as a recruiting coordinator, what is the most overrated metric in recruiting and what is the most underrated metric?
Man, that's a great question. It's hard for me to say overrated on the mound with velocity because it's becoming a velocity game to some.
Right.
Everybody hits velocity. I would say I'll answer your second part first. The most underrated metric is the ability to throw strikes. Too many people rely too much on the radar gun. They rely way too much on what that tool in their hand says, and they don't trust their eyes. For me, if a guy doesn't throw strikes, it's going to be really hard. It's comparable to a guy that has big time power, but all he does is swing and miss. It's hard to teach those things. It's not impossible, and it's certainly something we can develop. But if you have a lack of command of the baseball on the mound, for me personally, I have a real hard time, recruiting that guy, unless it's just an electric body with an electric arm and the stuff is so good, you go, we got to take a chance. But if you have average stuff and you don't command the baseball, that's going to be difficult. But if you've got average to tick above average stuff and you can command the fastball and you have at least one secondary pitch you can throw in most counts, boy, that's a guy you got to look at, because that's a guy that knows how to get outs and knows how to pitch. And so often we just talk about the radar gun. We talk about, whether it's, the heat sheet or whatever people want to call it. I think it's the ability to throw strikes and get outs. I mean, that's invaluable. It's something that everybody wants. Nobody wants to talk about, but it's something that we certainly look at. And for me personally, it's the guy's ability to throw strikes is invaluable.
You are a wealth of information, so I'm going to keep you even longer if I
Please.
can.
Please, yeah,
what
great.
about hitters? They go to these showcases. I see some of these
Sure.
online platforms. There's a million different metrics and
No doubt.
bat acceleration speed. And
Yeah.
like,
Right.
what's needed and what's not when evaluating a hitter?
I think that the exit velocity is fine. I think it's great. I think it is overvalued, as well as, all velocities I think are overvalued. I think for me, it's how a guy's swing works. It's how athletic he is. I think the one thing is no swing is perfect. I mean, even our guy that maybe hits 400, he's still making adjustments every day. So I think you look at that and go, can I work with that swing? Is there things I can work with? Me personally, I love to see a guy that when he swings, he's got really loose hands and the barrel accelerates. When the barrel can accelerate through the zone, even there's a little bit of length, or even if he cuts it off a little bit, if his lower half works and his barrel releases, and as he releases his swing, you just go, man, that was quick. And it's loose. I think you just want some looseness in that swing. I think too many guys want to be tight. They talk about certain launch angles or whatever. I think that stuff that is for the guys that are bigger and stronger and older. But for me, when I'm recruiting a guy, I love to see a guy that has some whip in his swing. And that's what I'd say, a guy that really releases the barrel. It has some bat speed. And, man, you look at it and go, man, that was quick. And it was loose. It was, you don't want to see a guy that has a ton of effort that's falling backwards and can't repeat. That doesn't do any good. Right. But you want to see, for me, again, it's the athleticism that plays, but a guy that really has some looseness in his hands and wrists and has some whip in his swing. I love that stuff. And you look at certain guys, and I won't name them, but there's certain guys across the country that recruited, then now they're either freshmen, and I'm like, well, yeah, he's hitting because he can do these certain things. And you just go, it's fun to see those guys when you go, man, I really like that guy. Even if he's not in your program, he's having a lot of success. You go, man, that's awesome. And so that for me is something I love on the hitter side. I think for me, again, when you're looking at hitters, it's the same thing on the mound. You're looking for guys that can repeat. You're looking for guys that know who they are, know how to repeat, whether it's their swing, whether it's their delivery. That's going to lead to more consistent success. And this game and this challenge we have is about the challenge of being consistent. Our ability to be consistent is going to win, whether that's recruiting, whether that's communicating, swinging, defending, throwing. I don't care what it is. Our ability to be consistent will lead to future success. And that's certainly something we stress here at Purdue, whether it's on the mound or offensive or just, again, how we play catch every day. It means something. You need to be consistent in that stuff.
When we did the college tour, the first episode we did was at Duke, and that's something that stuck with me. Coach Pollard said one of the biggest indicators for him of success from high school to college is the ability to be consistent with what you're doing.
It doesn't lie. I think that's the thing, Josh, is you look at this stuff, and so many people want to look at certain things and try to make it something out of nothing. But a guy's history, generally speaking, gives you a pretty good explanation or a pretty good idea into what he might be or has a chance to be. If you see a guy that continues to do the same thing over and over again and has the same, whether it's a stat line, and, he doesn't swing and miss, or he has a ton of walks, or, whatever it is, I think that leads to future success. And again, you look at what Coach Pollard's done at Duke, man, they are the epitome of consistency, because they didn't try to do it too quickly. They built the program. They knew who they were. They got the right guys in the program. I mean, God, they've gone to back-to-back super regionals. We faced them early in the year in Minneapolis, and Bryce Jarvis kicked our daggum tail. I mean, the guy's, he's consistent, and it's fun to watch those guys. And I have all the, highly thought of those guys, and what, JJ, I think, does a great job over there. And those guys will be successful for a long time because they've built it with consistency.
Right. Well, this was phenomenal. I try to make each one of these a little bit different, and this was definitely different. And I love covering the stuff. A lot for young guys to learn here, and enjoyable. You and your family stay safe. Thanks so much for doing this, Coach.
I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing with college baseball. I mean, we're all looking for something, and you've put it on a platform. Whether it started the fall, now you're doing this stuff, Josh. And I just think it's awesome, because college baseball is still growing. And we can get more of it out there for people to see and be involved in, and create even more interest and buzz, even in a period right now where it's a little bit boring and it's down. I think it's a great thing. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity and appreciate what you're doing as well.
Thanks, man. You just got it. There's a big audience for it. We just got to find a way to get it out there more, and stuff like this out there more,
That's right. I think right now, especially, you're hitting on a nerve where people are looking for anything. And why not fill the gap with what's supposed to be going on right now anyways, is college baseball, and what, other people have done, and whether it's ESPN or whatever, have the way they've done it the last few years, and they've just done such a great job of getting it out there. And I think you're continuing that success on another platform, which people, again, are certainly looking for. So again, we really appreciate it here at Purdue, and thanks for all you're doing.